and welcome to the Hybrid School Builders Podcast. I am your host, Rebecca Foley, and I am so glad you are joining me today. I am a fellow grassroots founder who is hoping to make your journey toward founding a sustainable hybrid school a little bit easier. If you are dreaming of starting a hybrid school, or perhaps you've already gotten started, you are in the right place. Join me as we dive into real stories, practical tips, and hard-won lessons that I have learned to help you launch and grow your program with confidence. Remember, building a hybrid school is not just about creating a business or creating jobs. It's not even about just serving the children who attend the program. It's literally about reshaping the landscape of education, and we can do that one community, one entrepreneur, and one program at a time. Hi, today I wanted to talk about the difference between a private school and a homeschool supplement. All right, so one of the first things you're going to have to decide when you set up any kind of program is whether it's going to legally be a school or not. Now, my disclaimer, I am not a lawyer. Please do your research for your particular state. You can go to your state website, Department of Education, and literally just find the law on private schools. It sounds intimidating, but it's really helpful to just read it. It's usually just a few sections of law that tells what a private school is and how you can become a private school, the different ways. And then also understand your homeschool law, which you can go to Homeschool Legal Defense Association, HSLDA, and their website and look up your state, and you can read a bit about your homeschool law if you don't know. So make sure you understand your state. But in general, a private school is a legal school under the state law, which means that it has to report to the state as far as being accountable for the children that are attending it. That usually means there's certain regulations on the teachers, the number of days, the subjects that are covered, and the school has to keep track of those things, okay? So now there might be different ways for a program to become a school. So in Pennsylvania, where I live now, there are 3 ways to become a private school. You can either directly be licensed by the Department of Education in Pennsylvania, which comes with certain regulations for the teachers and the subjects that have to be covered and the days, and it's directly licensed by the Department of Education, okay? You can also become accredited by, I think there's 4 accreditation agencies that Pennsylvania allows. If you fulfill the accreditation agency's requirements for being an accredited school, and then I think there's some sort of licensing or something. You have to do something with the state, to tell them you exist and that you're accredited. That also is another way. The third way is to be operated by a church or a university. And that is probably the easiest way, as far as there seems to be a bit of a loophole from my understanding that a church, and I think this is why we see a lot of church schools all over the place, a church can operate a school with probably the least amount of regulation. Like as a ministry of a school, they're allowed to do that. And I believe a university can do that as well, although I don't know as many universities that do that. But you often see that with churches, okay? So that's just something to know if you decide that you do want to take the school route. But again, you have to understand your particular state. Now, what is probably going to be unchanging in that is that in a hybrid model, the home part of hybrid in a private school, legal private school, you can still do a hybrid model, probably. Again, understand your law, but you probably can still do a hybrid model, but the home part is still under the authority of the school, in the sense that the school is responsible for what happens at home. Home is more like a satellite campus, okay? So the days at home are counted. They have to be held accountable for those being done and the subjects being done and the work being done, or the hours, okay? And that is not the same as a homeschool, which goes in the other direction, all right? So that's a big difference probably as far as what is done at home and what the school itself is responsible for making sure that they provide. So you might only want to provide certain subjects, but if you're going to go the legal school route, you have to provide all of them. In some way, shape, or form, you have to provide all of them, okay, as well as all of the days. Now, I think that most hybrid schools that I know of including the one that I started, actually acts as a supplement to homeschoolers. Now, in this case, you need to understand your homeschool law. So in this case, it's the parent that's responsible. So they're the ones who have to make sure the days are all accounted for, assuming that that's what your law requires. There's some states that are very easy on the homeschool law. And if the parents say they're homeschooling, they hardly have to do anything after that. There's other states where you have to prove that what you've done. In my state, you have to send in paperwork. You have to meet with an evaluator. You have to keep a portfolio. You have to send in a signed letter to the district. There's quite a bit of regulation if you're a homeschooler. So you have to understand that law. In that case, you are providing a service to homeschoolers. And even if it's 2 or 3 days a week, it's a service to homeschoolers. The parent is still the primary educator, supervisor of education, as the law in our state says. The parent is the supervisor of education, okay? They're the ones accountable to the district, to the state for making sure the children are educated, okay? So in that case, you can provide whatever you want, and the parents can just take it or leave it, right? If they want a 2-day program, they come to you, and they get 2 days taken care of, and then they provide the rest. Okay. So as far as the legal setup of that, you don't have to worry about accreditation or the state or a church or anything. You just are a business. It's almost like a tutoring business, okay? Or just even providing like a tutoring service at home. Like if you just tutor a kid, you're providing a service, right? If you actually open a business where you have, maybe tutors that you hire and they come and kids come and it's like a tutoring business, that's a business that's providing a supplement to school, right? Well, that's very similar to the service that you're providing to homeschoolers, okay? Now, again, your state is going to determine whether there's certain specific labels that you want to use that might be more advantageous or whatever. But in general, that is how that works, okay? Now, when it comes down to like the practical part of like how you're going to format what your school looks like and what your home days look like, this is going to be informed by your passion, your why for what you want to offer, as well as by what your parents are telling you when you do your market validation. So if you have a lot of people who are like, oh, I love this idea, but man, I am really intimidated by the idea of homeschooling, you probably are going to want to lean more into giving them pretty robust things for home, okay? So if you give them a lot of support for home, you give them like pretty much the whole everything that they need to homeschool, give them curriculum recommendations, maybe give them schedule ideas, give them support for all kinds of stuff at home as well. Doesn't mean you're not like actually doing it, but you're giving them a very robust recommendations. Maybe you do some training seminars. Maybe we had an evaluator, because we have to have evaluators in our state, come and actually do a little workshop every year so that parents could come in and they would leave, especially the ones who were most uncomfortable with homeschooling. They were coming from maybe a public school background. They would go to the meeting, and then they'd walk out and be like, oh, I feel so much better. Like now I understand what it is I'm supposed to do. I'm glad you helped me with this. So that kind of support can be really helpful. If you have a whole group of people who's like homeschoolers, like this is what they want to do, maybe they've been doing it already, and they don't feel, they're a little more worried about you telling them what to do, and they're more afraid of that. They want their freedom. You probably want to lean more into like just making sure that we're offering on those school days is self-contained, and it's really high quality stuff, and let them have their independence. I think a good balance, and this is where we ended up landing for elementary, middle, and high school, I really think you have to lean more into making sure the two things are very cohesive. I also think that's true for math and for reading in the younger years, just because it's really confusing to be doing two different things. So either don't do those things at all at school, or make sure that the families are doing them at home, the same thing. And that's just going to be part of the deal. But what I was going to say is what can be very helpful is giving very robust recommendations, but making sure that they run like parallel to what you do at school. So what we ended up doing was pretty self-contained books at school, like the history and the artist composer study, and nature study, and the science and the Bible and memory work. Like they were just done at school. And the parents were told what they were doing, and they were encouraged to practice a lot of that stuff at home. And they were given recommendations for like books that they could read alongside, but they weren't given like, go home and read these pages and then come back tomorrow having read these, or, in 2 days having read these. And I don't think, I never regretted doing that, because we never ran into the problems of like half the class did it, half the class didn't, right? We only ran into those problems with math. So we moved more and more over the years toward like, let's just all do the same math curriculum and make sure it's a mastery-based curriculum. Okay. Where everybody's just focusing on one topic per week and we don't jump all over the place. Okay. But I could talk about that in another episode. So I think that that's good if you give really robust recommendations, but you don't necessarily require most of it. Okay. Because that way people can pick and choose. If they just want to follow what you say, they've got it there. If they don't, what you offer at school is still self-contained and they can do what they want at home, and it's really up to them. Okay. So I recommend a homeschool supplement from my experience, because it gives you more freedom in your program to do what you would like and not have to do a bunch of stuff or have to hold the parents accountable necessarily for every little thing. But I think there definitely is a place for that. So make sure that you understand your market and what it is you want to deliver. But I also think that the more robust the program is, but also the more freedom it allows, if you have this balance between like strong support for home, but make a bunch of it optional for what they have to do at home, but you have a really solid program when they're at school that you can attract from both the homeschool crowd as well as the school crowd. I think there's a rising group of people that are hybrid schoolers. That's what I call them, because they're just, they wouldn't necessarily be homeschoolers. They don't really know what they are. They haven't figured it out yet. Okay. Especially the younger families, but they can become hybrid schoolers if you will help them. Where when we first started, and certainly in the years before that, you kind of you had a lot of the homeschool people who were already doing it and already felt fairly confident in doing it. And then you had some people who were like afraid of homeschooling and intimidated by it, but they were willing to do it with the help. And then that group is still very much there, very much part of the population that you're appealing to, both of those groups. But I think once you exist and people know who you are and you build some trust, you'll see this rising group who are like, oh, I'm going to be a hybrid schooler. And they wouldn't really identify as either a homeschooler or a public schooler or full-time schooler. But that kind of comes along the line. If a hybrid school doesn't exist in your area, nobody can be one of those because it doesn't exist yet. Okay. But it's helpful to be able to appeal to both of those groups. So those are just some tips. So I hope that helps you understand the difference between becoming a legal private school and becoming a homeschool supplement. One more time, I will say, make sure you understand your state's law. You can even talk to a lawyer if you have the money to pay them. That is not a bad idea. But you can do quite a bit of research yourself, just understanding what a private school and what homeschool law requires. Okay? So I hope that helped you out, and we will continue to talk about business structure in the upcoming episodes. Thanks so much for listening today. Don't forget to subscribe and make sure you check out the resources I am developing at startahybridSchool.com. Send me an email anytime. I would love to hear from you. Until next time.